Welcome to the Inspired Hive podcast, where we connect ambitious entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers with the ideas and inspiration to elevate their leadership, business, and life. I'm your host, Margo. Each week, we dive into powerful conversations on leadership, personal growth, and how to thrive along the journey. Well, today I have Amy Richardson with us. Amy is an attorney who has worked for a small boutique firm in Chicago for nearly 20 years after graduating from the University of Miami School of Law. She has also provided pro bono services for Legal Aid Chicago. Recently, she and her husband have launched a consulting business called R&R Consulting. We are catching Amy at a time of great transition and soon to be empty nesting. She is stepping into being her own boss and planning a move from Illinois to Wisconsin. There's no better time to chat with a new entrepreneur than when things are busy. She's both excited and nervous about these next chapters, but I know she will do great things. Let's just jump right in. I've worked with Amy for the past 5 or so years, and I've known her for several more. And I'm really excited to introduce all of you to Amy Richardson and have her share her worldly wisdom with us. So, welcome, Amy, to the Inspired Hive.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. That's quite the introduction. I'll try to live up to it.
There's so many different things that I have learned and been inspired from kind of how you live your world and your life that I really felt like this would be a great conversation to bring to listeners. So I really am grateful that you are willing to share your time and conversation with us. So I guess the first question I ask everyone that comes on is kind of where your story begins. And you've got a lot of different aspects. So I will just kind of toss that over to you.
Well, it was a rainy morning in Austin, Texas in 1976. Can you tell I'm a native Texan? No, no one can. It's not obvious. No, where my story begins, I mean, it depends kind of, I guess, on which story, right? Like we're always evolving and there's
Yeah.
different versions of ourselves all the time, even though at our fundamental core, we're the same, right? I know you've always been so interested in entrepreneurship, and I have not. I have never wanted to be an entrepreneur in my entire life. I have never wanted to be my own boss. And I think so much of that for me is I always felt like that would be an unstable path and unpredictable. And that doesn't jive with my personality. I love adventure, but not unless I know where my boundaries are and I have a plan of action. And I had so many friends in law school who went on and all they wanted to do was open up their own firm, right, and have their own private practice. And I just know I was just like, I need my steady paycheck. I need to know how I'm going to pay my rent and then a mortgage, even scarier, and all those things along the way. And I sort of fell into my current job by chance. I met my now boss's wife, ex-wife, at a mutual friend's baby shower. I met her in the kitchen, I remember, and she said, "Oh, so and so says you just took the bar exam and you're looking for a job." I said, "I am. It's kind of hard in Chicago to find." And she said, "Well, my husband happens to be thinking about hiring another associate." And I mean, that's how I got my job, right? It really fell into my lap, and I was so lucky because my motivation for going to law school was to work in the public interest and to work in the nonprofit world. And then I sort of fell into this private practice, which focused on not nonprofit organizations. So it really worked out great that I could work in the nonprofit world, but still be able to buy a house eventually and whatnot. So that's been really comfortable for a long time. And my relationships in my office are really comfortable, as you know. And now it's kind of scary, this idea of launching into being my own boss with my husband, a co-boss, this new adventure. And it's scary, but at the same time, I think having a partner doing it with me, having 20 years of experience knowing that I can do certain things that seem scary, it makes it more exciting.
It's almost like a whole new book, uh, not just a
Yeah.
new chapter, right? But
Yeah.
you tapped into a few things there that I think are really kind of a piece of something that when we're first starting out, we don't really recognize, and that is how much the opportunities can come along either when we're looking for them, but in the least expected places, or sometimes when we're not looking for them. And, they're just, the path is woven there. And it's up to us to kind of take that step or, take an action to kind of engage with that opportunity. And, I think it is a whole different experience when you are the one to kind of be in charge of where that dollar comes from, right? And it's not like you weren't in charge of where the dollar came from, but now it's a company that's your company and not kind of that employee kind of perspective. There's a lot of comfort in not journeying that alone, right? And having a partner to do that. But there's also a whole new level when it's your life partner and your business partner that is how
True.
you adventure that.
Yeah, very true. And actually, when we were doing some R&D on whether on starting this business, I went up to Madison, which is where I grew up, Madison, Wisconsin, and where we're actually planning on moving next year, um, and from Chicago. And I took a couple friends out to brunch, and their husbands, who I've known, their family. I've known these women since we were in elementary school, literally, and their husbands since we were in our early 20s. So I took four of them out to lunch, and both couples have owned small businesses together. One of them has owned four. So they really know what they're talking about, you know? And actually, in the one woman, she started her first business when we were 24, 25. And I just remember like staring at her like, but how are you going to do, how do you know what to do? Right. I just didn't have that confidence. And she said, well, I was confident, but I also was absolutely terrified. And I just decided to be fearless and just do it. I'm like, I don't have that. I don't have that courage. Like at least I didn't back then. I think I have more of it now that, as the years have worn on. But I took them out to lunch and I just picked their brains and said, okay, you own businesses with your spouses. Like, what do you recommend? And one of the men just looked at me, he's like, don't do it. in jest, in jest, I think. He got, backhanded a little bit on the arm, um, but they really had some wonderful advice for me. And I took copious notes and I came home, reported all to my husband and said, okay, here are the things. We're not allowed to talk about stuff outside of meetings. We're not allowed to text each other about work. Right. It has to be.
Mhm.
And so it really was super helpful to have people that I trusted, who I'd known for a long time, and partners that I'd known for a long time give us a lot of advice on the front end. And that made me much more confident that he and I could do this. And I know that he's going to be a great business partner because I've seen him how he is as a boss already and how he is as an employee, and his knowledge base is extensive in what we're doing. And so I'm excited. I don't know. It's not going to be too much him for me, but it'll be a lot of me for him to be married and to be a spouse. But I think we're going to do okay. I'm excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you highlight a few things there of doing some research, but not letting that necessarily kind of deter you. It really is giving you ideas and strategies and maybe some systems or procedures to kind of put in place to help with that. And interesting where you asked your friend, how she knew how to do it. And, she's like, I really didn't. And I mean, that truly is the truth of most entrepreneurs. Nobody knew what they were doing. They just leapt and took a step and figured it out as they went. And that really is a key to, how much of that you can tolerate. And building the skills of managing those kinds of stressors. I've heard some folks talk about, billionaires don't do anything truly really different to what we do in our day. It's just their problems that they're solving are at a different scale than the problems that we're solving, right? And I think about that a lot, that it really is, entrepreneurship is really solving problems for, people. and getting paid to do that in a way. And so you have a lot of skills that you bring to that. And you've got a partner who has maybe the practical components, and you've got some of those other skills that often people have to seek out and get leverage or consultation, and you're bringing that into that business partnership, which is, I think, pretty awesome. So
Yeah, I mean, we have two very different skill sets.
yeah.
So when he first broached this idea to me a couple of years ago, he said, I think I want to start this and I want to do it with you. And it was because he was inspired by his CEO at the time, who had a side gig with his wife also an attorney. And he said, these are the areas where I think you could be super helpful and you could be really involved. And I was like, he started listing the things. I said, I know how to do that. I can learn how to do that. I can figure this out. And recently he was approached by our first prospective client. So we're right now working on a proposal, which is wild because we weren't expecting to start just yet. I said, but we should not let this opportunity pass, right? But he said, well, they want X, Y, and Z. I'm like, well, that's not in our business model, but you know how to do that. He's like, I do know how to do that. And so it's almost like just informing and having the first 3 meetings that we've had, where we've had task lists and we've come back to each other and said, okay, I got our operating agreement done. I looked into insurance. Even doing that, I realized that I'm more capable than
Mm.
I knew, and that I had developed some skills over the years that actually prepared me for this. Again, it's like I'm confident in the job that I've been doing for almost 20 years, and I'm confident in other aspects of my life, but starting a business, I'm like, I don't know how. And that's kind of the imposter syndrome, right? And
Yeah.
most of us have some level of that. I certainly have had a lot of that in my life, but it, I have to shut her up sometimes and just say, just calm down. You've made it this far and you've done pretty well. You've been successful in these
Yeah.
areas of your life when you didn't know if that you could be successful in. So just settle down and let's just try this.
You realize that what is involved in business is not really anything different than what's involved in running a family or getting through school, or it's just applied. Those skills are applied in a bit different way when we're thinking about a business versus a house, or um, a process in terms of your professional development. So I am super excited to see how this all is rolling out for you. And I think the other piece of that is, if this wasn't terrifying or wasn't on that excitement side of things, it probably wouldn't be the thing necessarily to jump in and do, because you've when we're super comfortable with things, it's not really necessarily the thing we want to continue to be doing a lot more of. And so I think there's a bonus here of helping you across that other transition of empty nesting and navigating, all the other changes that you're kind of putting into the next year.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that my husband wants to get the ball rolling is because he's worried that I'm going to desperately need a project when we're empty nesters, because he's lived with me when I haven't had a project and it's not pleasant. I need to have my hands in something. I need to be working towards something. And if that's not professionally, it's the pro bono stuff, right? So if it's like slow in the day to day, then I'll launch myself into more of that. Or if I sit there and start twiddling my thumbs, which it for me actually manifests in me bouncing my leg up and down, he gets nervous. It's like, what do you need from me today? Like, you need to leave the house. You need to go, but you need a new project. So I think that's I think it's a good time to do it. I think it'll be good for me to have something to do.
Amy, what inspires you?
Oh, a million things. I think number one, um, people just doing good in the world. And just I think about like who do I look to for inspiration, and sort of in different, it falls into different cat buckets, right? Of what kind of inspiration I need that day. But um I tend to look to people who are finding a grounding force within themselves
Mm.
to survive in this current madness in the world, and to survive everything that comes flying at us through social media and through the news. And so when I look for inspiration, I look for people who are finding their their center in all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and learning from them some tips to find my center. Because I think you're just a better human when you can just calm down on the inside and tune some things out and then refocus on like what's good. And then those people also, I think, are much, much better at channeling their energy, and whether that is in the form of anger or sadness, or just excitement, channeling that energy into doing good for other people just for the sake of doing good, not because there's a reward, right? And so those are the people I find the most inspiring on a personal level. And then when it comes to like a professional level, I look to people who are like social justice warriors. And that gets the fire in my belly lit if I need like a boost of that. Like Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. Like if I ever need a boost of something, I just go watch one of his interviews or dip back into one of his books. And it's just, he is someone who has sacrificed a ton to do what he does. And he has helped so many people. And he really is a champion for justice for people who are underserved and underrepresented and disadvantaged in so many ways. So it kind of depends on what I'm looking for. If I need the fire, I go to him. If I need to calm down, I need to go elsewhere outside of activism, because that's when
Yeah.
that gets me stressed. It gets me excited. It gets that fire lit, but it also stresses me out because I always kind of feel like, am I doing enough, right, to give back? And um, I don't think I deserve to feel that way because I think I do what I can and what I'm capable of. But right, like I always feel like I should push myself a little bit harder because I don't know. Maybe I don't feel like I think I'm in that place where I don't know if I deserve to rest. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm. Where
Yeah.
where do you think that came from? Like way back when?
Well, I definitely grew up in an upper middle class household, so I never struggled, right? Like I mean, granted, my parents paid for college, which is wonderful. And I paid I put myself through grad school, which I'm still paying for now all these years later. Um, But then, and I lived paycheck to paycheck, in between, when I was in my 20s for sure, but I never really suffered, right? Like I could always feed myself and I could always pay rent. And so I think understanding my privilege is a huge part of that and understanding that I have a responsibility. And there are some people out there who are like, I've worked for what I have,
Mm-hmm.
so I deserve it. And I'm like, you're right, you do deserve to have it, but you've also gotten there maybe because some other forces are at work, right? Like, and so I think I feel sometimes like I can't rest because I've been so privileged, right? Or I've had such an advantage. I recognize my privilege. I feel responsible to acknowledge it and to um, give back what I can, but I try to find a balance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there a blessing or maybe a big lesson that you've been blessed with in your journey?
Oh, I mean, yeah, a lot. I think I've been very blessed in my professional life to be given by my boss, but be given a lot of flexibility in my life and in my schedule. And he's someone who very much understands that we work to live, not the other way around. And so he's always said family first. And we've both had emergencies come up. We've both covered for each other and doing various things. And he understood, years ago when I needed to change my hours around because of my kids needed a certain level of care, in the afternoons. And so I feel like that's been a huge blessing because that's allowed me to be so grateful for having that flexibility, but then also like have some grace for people who don't have that and a better understanding of what other people go through, like especially like in parenting. That my schedule, my work life has allowed me to be really a really involved parent. It's such a blessing. I mean, to a level that I couldn't have done if I had been in a different position. When my kids especially really needed it.
I always have some time to say brag on yourself for a little bit. And I'm curious if you are in a place where you want to share what the new business is going to be doing or what
Sure.
is kind of coming with that.
Sure. Well, the business is my husband's in the world of parking, which sounds super sexy, I know. And it's and it's been so actually entertaining to hear all his stories over the years. He's the CEO of the largest underground parking garage in the world, here in Chicago, and it's enormous. It's like 1 million square feet or something ridiculous like that.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, and seeing him. his knowledge of parking, how to maximize revenue in parking spaces and implement green roofs initiatives. And he's been a champion for EV, charging and all these things. And we're starting a business doing parking consulting for others. And I didn't know it was a thing. Like, I just had no idea until I actually started Googling like parking consulting companies. And sure enough, there's people you can hire to help you figure out what to do with your parking lot or how to maximize this and how to get the right. And I had no idea. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it would never occur to me. So that's our main business. But we're also looking into helping individuals respond to RFPs with the city as well, and looking to use city property for different projects, and we're helping them respond to those. And it turns out my husband knows how to do that, and then when I started looking at it, I realized things that because I know the city so well too, right? It helps to have that background to help people coming in from somewhere else trying to figure out what's going to make sense for their business in the city. So that's what we're moving into. But again, it's in the baby infantile phase right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always, I think, exciting to chat with folks in these early stages, and when you're seeing all the potential that could be there, or maybe even iterating on kind of new aspects of things you hadn't thought about but people are looking for, and kind of bringing that into what you're offering, or what you're going to be incorporating into that business. And um I think it's always fun to be involved or be part of these early conversations, and then to check back in 6 months, a year, and see kind of where are things, how many levels have you grown
Do we
through.
have a bank account open yet? Do we
uh,
have a website?
and just kind of following the journey, because I think so many folks, they see what people have out there on websites or in social media, and you kind of alluded to this before, but I mean, there's a lot that comes at us these days. The information is very easy to access, but what we don't see is all the work that goes into that, right? And I think a piece of things, we can often get sidetracked to compare where we are to where someone else is way farther down the journey, rather than seeing, okay, they had to start somewhere. You don't
Mhm.
usually see that part of the story. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, because it's that start, that infant part of the journey, that I think is so important to capture, to allow you to remember that as well, a year from now.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the mistakes that we make. I mean, it's like what should we have included in that first contract that we didn't maybe,
Right.
or yeah, anything, right?
Right.
Um, and how it
But even
evolves.
thinking at that level, like right
Yeah,
now, like that's a big problem, so to speak. But a year from now, that's not even going to be on your radar as something you would even give, 20
right,
minutes to, right? And so
right.
it's because that's the project at the moment, that's what the focus is. And I'm just so excited to see how that goes for both of you.
Yeah, me too. And then, like when you start something, when I started my job almost 20 years ago, all the mistakes back then, I can't even imagine making now, right? But it's so great I made them because you learn from them and not make those same mistakes again. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just have to learn from them.
Well, and that really is the piece of that, right? And I guess at this point, as we're kind of headed to wrapping things up, I'd love to know if you have a piece of advice for folks. Maybe it's something someone shared with you, or you learned the hard way along the way. Is there something you'd like folks to know?
Yeah, I think I wish I'd taken some more risks,
Mm,
and had more confidence in myself. So I think that's easy to say when you're middle aged. I mean, you probably a lot of people feel that way, but I think take more risks. You know, don't put yourself in a position where you're going to make yourself crazy, or that's going to bankrupt you necessarily, but take more risk, I think. And if you see something and you want to do it when you're 24, just do it. because you're probably not going to do it again when you're 54.
I love that. I think it, that is so true in so many things. In for sure in entrepreneurship, the paths that we lay out as the plan we conceive is never the the outcome as kind of told after the fact, right? There's so much we learn along the way and so many other things that come along and opportunities and things that challenge us and grow us that we can't know all of that ahead of time. So I love your idea of just take the risk,
Yeah.
let it help you learn.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more spontaneous and more of a risk taker now at 49 than I was at 19, which is sort of wild because I was jumping out of planes then. But now I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that again anymore. Like I wouldn't do that again, but different kinds of risks, you know?
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
Well, I always wrap the conversation and the episode with a quote. And I pick them ahead of time, so I never really know kind of what we're going to specifically be talking about. And it's always amazing to me how they kind of end up being a great summary for the things that we do talk about. And for today, I picked my favorite bear, a quote from Winnie the Pooh or A.A. Milne. And the quote is, "Life is a journey to be experienced, not a problem to be solved." And
I love that.
it really captures and hits on a number of the things that you share with us today in terms of just really getting in and taking a few risks and experiencing things and kind of enjoying some of that along the way, and not being grounded and not too boundaried that you can't enjoy it. So grateful you listened to this episode of the Inspired Hive podcast. Be sure to follow me on social media at Inspired Hive Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. I can't wait to see you back here for our next episode, and as always, remember to live inspired.